She turned the key inside, and I heard the dry click that cut through my chest more than the cold night wind. The porch light lit up like an eye staring at me, and her voice came through the door with that hurting calmness. Whoever doesn't pay, doesn't enter. I had the grocery bag still in my hand, milk bottles hitting each other, and my fingers ached from holding it. It was November in rural Ohio. The temperature dropped quickly after 6, and I only had a thin coat because I left the house thinking I would be back in 20 minutes. I stood in front of the door for a few seconds, trying to breathe without trembling, and said only one sentence, low, to myself. Today, I don't ask. Today, I don't beg you. My name is Maya Johnson. I'm 28 years old. I've been married to Daniel for 3 years, and I work the morning shift in a pediatric clinic. The house is rented in my name and his, but the one who behaves like the owner is his mother, Lorraine. She always had the key for safety. That's what I was told in the beginning, when we lived here to save money before trying to buy our own place. I accepted, thinking that respect is built calmly, that coexistence is adjusted with conversation, that you don't fight with a mother. Gradually, I learned that some people confuse kindness with authorization, to cross the line, and Lorraine loved to push the limit until it seemed normal. It all started with that education that spoils inside. This sofa is not for visitors, it's for family. No one asked for your recipe, dear. My son likes rice the right way. She opened my closet saying she was organizing, complained about my soap in the bathroom as if it were an invasion, counted the rolls of paper towels, and asked questions about my salary in the sweet voice of someone who offers tea. When we delayed half of the rent because of a medical expense, she repeated, "Whoever doesn't pay, doesn't rule," as if managing a delay with understanding was humiliation for her. I wrote down each sentence so as not to lose myself, and I responded with silence so as not to lose myself from Daniel. But there are nights when silence becomes something else. Decision. That night, I saw the reflection of a window open across the street. Mr. Green, our neighbor across the street, raised his cell phone and stared at me without approaching. I didn't feel exposed. I felt seen. I saw his daughter, Hannah, appear behind the curtain in a baggy sweatshirt and her face worried. They didn't say anything, and that nothing helped me. I put the bags on the step, breathed, texted Daniel. He replied from the truck, still 2 hours away. "Stay at Green's house, please." I read it, put my cell phone away, and decided not to leave my own step. I wouldn't cross the street to seek shelter while my home was an arm's length away. I was going to stay, whole, quiet, present. On the other side of the door, she turned the key again, as if reminding me that the click was in her hands. I sat on the stairs, hugged my knees, and spoke to the door. "Lorraine, I bought Daniel's medicines. They are here. I'll leave the bags on the carpet." Silence. "Lorraine, it's cold. I'm going to sit on the step." Silence. "Lorraine, I'm not going to argue." To each sentence of mine, she responded with nothing. I heard footsteps inside, pot stirring, television on. The smell of sautéed garlic went through the crack and made me want to cry, but I held my breath and let it pass. When I looked to the right, Mr. Green was still filming. He made a small gesture with his hand, something between "we're here" and "continue." It was non-invasive. It was a testimony. I even imagined that it could turn into conversation on the block, street corner gossip, but there was something about his posture, firm and respectful, that took away any flavor of derision from that recording. It was just the truth being kept. The first neighbor to stop was Mrs. Miller, who walks her dog after the evening news. "Are you okay?" she asked, with the leash twisted in her fingers. I said I was, and that I would stay there for a while. She looked at the door, recognized the voice of Lorraine from another life, from other old fights that every small town already knows, and said, "If you need it, my balcony has a blanket." I thanked him with my head. I could get up and accept it, but I stayed. The light from the streetlight left a yellow circle on the sidewalk, and I stayed inside it like someone who draws a line on the ground and decides not to back down. I took the receipt for the purchases, folded it carefully, and put it inside the boot, as if keeping a paper would also save my place there. When the wind grew stronger, Mr. Green crossed the street. He didn't go near the door. He stopped at the first step. "Maya, I'm recording because the neighborhood has seen too many things pretended to be normal. If you want, I'll stop." I said, "No, Mr. Green. Keep going." Lorraine noticed his presence. The curtain shifted for a second. The television got louder, as if she wanted to cover any sound other than her own. That's when my phone rang with Daniel's name. I answered at the first ring. He heard me breathe. "I'm coming. It doesn't knock on the door. Don't beg. I already get it." I replied that everything was fine. "I told you about the video." He was silent for a few seconds and said, Let the city see what it took me a while to admit. I hung up. I clasped my hands to warm my fingers. I thought about the first time Lorraine entered unannounced, and I smiled, asking permission for my own house. I thought about the second time, when she rearranged my clothes and threw away my graduation dress because it was old. I thought of each "darling" said as a hidden knife, and I understood that that locked door was less about money and more about control. When my cell phone clock struck 8:45, I heard laughter inside. They were not mine. They were not Daniel's. They were hers, laughing with their own power. I let the sound go through me without cracking anything. Mr. Green stepped closer and spoke, without looking at the camera. "Hannah has already sent the video to the neighborhood group. They want to know if you're safe." I said yes. Hannah crossed the street with Athermos and handed me hot chocolate. "My mother said that no one should stand outside on our street," she said, and then looked out the lit window as if looking at an old story that had always wanted proof. I took a sip and felt my body warm up inside. The click of the cup on the edge seemed louder to me than the click of the keyhole, and at that moment I knew that I was not the one who was exposed. It was the truth. When the clock passed 9, I could no longer feel my fingertips. Even so, I kept my hands firmly in my lap, as if any tremor could deliver my pain to whoever was inside, knowing exactly what they were doing. Mr. Green went to the car and returned with a light blue blanket. He didn't ask if I wanted to. He just slowly placed it on my shoulders, respecting my space, and said, "Sometimes we help just by staying together." I thanked him with a short smile. I had learned to hide discomfort behind smiles since he met Lorraine. But now, for the first time, I smiled, and it wasn't to please anyone. It was to remind me that I was still whole. The front door made a noise as she unlocked. I heard the turn of the key and stood, waiting for some word that didn't come laden with poison. Lorraine opened the door just enough to show half of her face, illuminated by the warm light of the room. "Go to someone's house," she said, as if telling an animal to move away from the yard. "I've already said that this is not a hotel." I felt like asking if she could hear herself, if she understood that she kicked me out of a place where I also lived. But I didn't say anything, and maybe that annoyed her more. She closed the door tightly again, as if to cut off the dialogue with the wood. The blanket on my shoulders weighed a little more, not from cold, but from decision. A few minutes later, the police car turned the corner. Not with sirens, not in a hurry, but with that presence that every small neighborhood recognizes. They stopped in front of the house, talked briefly with Mr. Green, and then approached me. "Good evening, ma'am," said the tallest officer, a man in his 50s with a firm posture but polite look. "We received some calls. Is everything okay with you?" I explained that I lived there, that I was waiting for my husband, and that his mother had decided not to let me in. The officer stared at the door for a few seconds before asking, "Is your name on the lease?" I nodded, and it was the first time in a long time that I felt the weight of legality on my side. They rang the doorbell. I heard the television being turned off in a hurry. Lorraine took a few seconds to open it, perhaps calculating which mask to use. When she finally appeared, she came with a polite smile that she never showed me. "Good evening, officers. How can I help?" The officer quickly explained the situation and pointed it at me. Lorraine feigned surprise, placing her hand on her chest as if she were the victim of a horrible misunderstanding. "My son asked me to take care of the house until he arrived. She didn't pay her share and I set limits." I almost laughed at that theater, but I took a deep breath. The policeman replied calmly, "If her name is on the contract, she has the right to enter. Financial conversations you will solve at another time. It's cold outside." Lorraine bit her lower lip for a moment and I recognized her. It was the expression she made when she realized that the control was slipping through her fingers. "All right," she said, opening the door a little wider. "She can come in, but I hope it respects my home. My house." She couldn't form another sentence that didn't make clear the territory she wanted to dominate. The policeman thanked me and looked at me firmly. "If you need anything, just call. None of this should be normal." I nodded and, inside, something was organized. That simple, direct sentence gave me ground. None of this should be normal. Neither the way she spoke to me, nor the way I got used to accepting. When I set foot inside the house, the smell of food that had made me almost cry once had no force on me at all. I dropped the bags in the kitchen, took off my coat, and went straight up to the bedroom. Lorraine stood in the hallway watching me as if I had broken some invisible rule. "It doesn't end here," she muttered quietly. Enough for me to hear. I didn't even turn around, because there, at that moment, I understood. She was afraid. Afraid of me. Fear of video. Fear of no longer being able to be the only voice in that house. Upstairs, I sat on the bed and took a deep breath. I needed something to anchor me, so I opened the neighborhood group. The video was already there. Hundreds of comments in a few minutes. Outraged people. People saying that they had seen Lorraine treat others like this. People tagging Daniel. The truth was spreading without me having to move another finger. I read each message calmly, not for pleasure, but for confirmation. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't overly sensitive. I was being abused. And now other people saw it. Daniel called me again. I answered in a low voice so as not to attract attention. He said, "I'll be there in 40 minutes. I don't want you to talk to her until I arrive." I said that's okay. He breathed heavily, as if gathering courage for a next step. Tomorrow, the house will be ours again. I felt my heart beat faster, but I kept my voice calm. I know. When I hung up, I looked at the closed door to the room and thought, Lorraine thinks that locking a door defines who is boss. Tomorrow she discovers that whoever loses respect loses the key. And there, sitting on the edge of the bed where I had cried so many times in secret, I realized that, even inside the house, I was no longer attached to anything she did. She could turn keys, but I had begun to spin fate. I tried to sleep, but the silence of the room seemed to talk to me. I looked at the ceiling, remembering all the times I swallowed frogs to avoid fights, all the justifications I invented to defend someone who never respected me. I wanted to believe that coexistence would change, but what changed was me. I learned that when you lower your head every day, people start to think that it belongs on the ground. And there, in that bed, I swore to myself that I would never accept that again. The headlight of Daniel's car appeared through the window when it was past 10:30. I went down slowly, in no hurry to prove anything. Lorraine was on the couch, arms crossed, television off. She followed me with her eyes as if she were about to face a battle she never imagined losing. When Daniel walked through the door, he didn't look at her first. He came right up to me, put his coat over my shoulders, and asked, "Are you okay?" I answered yes, and that yes had a new weight. Lorraine cleared her throat, drawing attention. "Daniel, I just did what I thought was right. She has not fulfilled her commitments in this house." My husband kept his gaze fixed on me, as if he no longer had any interest in participating in her theater. Then he took a deep breath and turned around. "Mom, Maya works every day. She takes care of me when I get tired. If something is difficult for us, it's not her fault." His voice was firm, but it wasn't aggressive. It was protection, something he had been trying to learn. Lorraine stood up slowly. "Are you going to defend her even after what she did?" Daniel frowned. "What did she do, Mom? Did you get cold on the street because you decided that a humiliation would solve something?" She opened her mouth, but found no words. For the first time, Daniel was seeing everything without the filter of blind love. He took my cell phone and showed the video that was circulating. Lorraine came over to see, and her expression froze. That recording said more than any discussion could say. That's out of context," she whispered. Daniel just shook his head. "The context is simple. You locked my wife out. And that was the last time you did that." Lorraine took a step back, as if the room was getting smaller around her. The silence was harsh. I felt my breath hold in my chest, but not because I was nervous. It was because, for the first time, I was being defended inside my own home. Daniel approached his mother and spoke without raising his voice. "Tomorrow morning, I'll take your things to Aunt Carol's apartment. You can stay there as long as you want. Here, only those who know how to respect stay. Lorraine looked at me, hoping that I would back off, that I would offer an apology, that I would stop what was happening. I kept my posture. I learned to stand even when they wanted to bend. She left the room without saying anything else. Her bedroom door slammed, and I heard the noise as if it were a chapter closing. I stood there, standing, feeling the firm ground beneath my feet without having to shrink. Daniel held my hand, squeezed it carefully, and said, "I'm not going to let that happen again." I just replied, "I know." And this time it was true. When the door to Lorraine's room closed that night, I felt that something had finally changed between those walls. But real change doesn't just happen with a decision in the heat of the moment. It happens the next day, when we get up and stand firm in what we said, and that's exactly what we did. I woke up early, prepared coffee, and left the kitchen in silence. I didn't want confrontation. I just wanted everything to go in the right direction. Lorraine went down the stairs slowly with that posture of someone who refuses to accept that she has lost control. She looked at us as if she expected someone to apologize. No one asked. Daniel spoke first, in a calm voice. "Mom, your things are already separated. I'll stop by Aunt Carol's house with you." She frowned, surprised to see that he hadn't changed his mind during the night. "Are you really going to get me out of here because of this little theater?" she asked, trying to mask fear with arrogance. I stood behind him, watching everything in silence. Not because I lacked words, but because I knew that silence on the right side bothers me more than any speech. Lorraine walked to the kitchen, grabbed a glass, and made enough noise to let everyone know she was annoyed. Still, no reaction came from us. Daniel was firm. I was firm. And she realized that there was no longer a gap to control anything there. After a few minutes, she came back, took a deep breath, and said, "I deserve respect in this family." Daniel replied, "And Maya too." It was simple, direct. Truth rarely needs embellishment. As she went upstairs to finish packing her suitcase, the cell phone vibrated nonstop on the table. The video kept spreading. Comments even came from people from neighborhoods I had never set foot in. It was not revenge for revenge's sake. It was the truth freeing what was trapped between four walls. With each notification, I felt as if some of the weight I had carried on my shoulders was being lifted, little by little. When Lorraine came down with the suitcase, her gaze was different. Not defeated, but full of questions she didn't want to ask out loud. She looked at me as if trying to find a flaw, something that justified what she did. But what was seen there was not a small daughter-in-law in front of her mother-in-law. She was a whole woman, knowing her own worth. She said, "I hope you take good care of my son." I held back the impulse to respond with some sentence that would serve as a cut. It was the perfect opportunity to return the pain, but I didn't want to be the same. So I just said, "I'm going to take care of him, and of me too." Daniel took the suitcase without waiting for any more conversation and directed his mother to the car. Before leaving, he gave me a kiss on the forehead and said, "I'll be back quickly." I said I would be there. The door closed behind them, and suddenly the house seemed to breathe differently. I walked into the living room and sat down on the couch for the first time without feeling judged. Such a simple place can be a huge territory when you finally have freedom within it. When Daniel returned, he sat next to me and pulled me close. He said, "I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner." I replied that it wasn't his fault, but that he saw it now made all the difference. He took a deep breath as if releasing years of accumulated pressure. "This house is ours," he said, and I believed it. That afternoon, we took the first real step toward a life without humiliation. Changing locks had been just the beginning. What came next was even more important: rebuilding respect. And this reconstruction began there, with doors that open for those who deserve to stay inside. The next day, I woke up before the sun. The house was silent in a new way, a silence that did not suffocate. It was a silence that fit in my chest. I walked to the kitchen and started to prepare coffee. For the first time, I didn't feel watched. I didn't worry about hands opening my lockers without permission. He was not afraid to hear, "This is not for visitors." That kitchen, that cold floor underfoot, that cup in my hand, everything was finally mine too. Daniel came down soon after, his face still marked with sleep, but light. He hugged me from behind and said, "I've made a decision. We will look for another house, one that is ours alone from the beginning." I turned and looked into his eyes. It wasn't just about changing addresses. It was about changing history. I said yes with a simple smile, because sometimes the biggest victory is in the small answers. We sat down for coffee and talked about plans. We laughed at things that were not even funny before. The table looked different without the weight of someone waiting for me to get it wrong. I opened my phone and saw that the video was still running on the internet. Many messages of support arrived, and in the middle of them, one from Hannah. "You deserve to be home," I responded gratefully. She and her father had been witnesses to my limit, and that changed everything. Later, Daniel went to work, and I was fixing some things. Organizing the house in this way, calmly and without fear, seemed like an act of healing. When I finished, I sat on the porch and looked out over the street. The cold was still there, but now I felt it differently. He didn't kick me out. He only said that I survived him. Mr. Green walked past. He stopped, smiled, and said, "It was nice to see someone stand up on the right side." I thanked him. Sometimes all it takes is a camera pointed at the injustice for the abusado end. Before going back inside, I looked at the door. That door that had been used as a weapon against me. And I realized something important. No one can lock me out of what is mine. It doesn't matter who holds the key. Because respect doesn't come from the lock. It comes from how we get up after they try to make us fall. I went in and locked the door from the inside. Not out of fear, but to remind myself that now I am the one who decides who enters. I smiled, took a deep breath, sat on the couch, and felt a new, firm peace, like a well-placed brick after a renovation. I thought about everything that happened and understood, with absolute clarity. The most beautiful justice is the one that happens without shouting, the one that is built in silence, the one that makes those who tried to diminish you feel like they lost control. And that day, in that house, I was finally where I should have always been, inside, with my entire dignity.